If you're someone who loves mysterious stories, secrets buried in the depths of darkness, hit that subscribe button now so you won't miss any terrifying journeys ahead. And now, listen closely, because the story you're about to hear is not a legend spun by the overly imaginative, but something that truly happened in a place where light cannot reach, where time itself fractures, and people never return the same. On an early summer morning in 2019, the small town of Elmridge, Pennsylvania was engulfed by a vague sense of unease. Local police received a missing person report from the family of a young girl named Eliza Moore, 19 years old. Eliza was a freshman college student visiting home for the holidays, and after an argument with her mother, she stormed off into the Crowfield Forest, a primeval woodland on the outskirts of town, infamous for strange tales of people who entered and never returned. At first, no one was too worried. Eliza was strong-willed, loved nature, enjoyed hiking, and often explored forest trails. But as the second day passed, then the third, and there was still no trace of her, people began to feel that something was very wrong. Rescue teams scoured the forest for 2 whole weeks using search dogs and drones, but the only things they found were a blood-stained handkerchief and a broken necklace lying beside an old tree. The search was eventually called off without anyone daring to voice the real reason, because those involved in the search began to share the same nightmare. A girl lost in the woods, being dragged into the darkness by something. And each time they woke up, they still heard a hoarse voice whispering through the rustling leaves, "I'm still here." Time passed. The pain faded into a dark corner of Elmridge's memory. Eliza's family moved away just a few months later, leaving behind nothing but a vacant house on Sycamore Street. The house fell into disrepair, windows shattered, weeds waist-high. Locals whispered that if you passed by at midnight, you could hear footsteps shuffling down the upstairs hallway or soft tapping on the windows like someone was trying to get out. Then exactly 5 years later, on the anniversary of Eliza's disappearance, a delivery truck driver happened to be passing through the road that cuts across Crowfield Forest when he slammed on the brakes at an unbelievable sight. On the roadside, right at the forest edge, was a skinny girl with tangled hair, tattered clothes, and bare feet, slowly walking forward. He called out to her, but she didn't respond, just turned her face toward him, and her eyes made his blood run cold. They were not the eyes of a girl, but 2 deep, hollow sockets filled with nothing but an endless emptiness. Yet, when the police arrived and brought her in, her identity was confirmed through DNA. It was Eliza Moore. No one could understand how she had survived 5 years in the deep woods without leaving a trace. No major injuries, no visible illness, but she didn't say a word. For the first 3 months, Eliza didn't interact with anyone, just sat motionless on her hospital bed, eyes blank, staring out the window as if she were still somewhere far away. Psychiatrists diagnosed her with deep trauma, but no one could pinpoint what she was thinking. Until one night, the nurse on duty heard whispering coming from Eliza's room, a voice that sounded like it came from a strangled throat, each word drawn out terrifyingly. The nurse opened the door and saw Eliza sitting on the bed, head tilted unnaturally to one side, hands bleeding from scratching her own skin, and her mouth repeating the same phrase over and over. "It's gone now, but it still sees me through my eyes." From then on, strange phenomena began to occur. Eliza's biometric monitors would spike randomly, sometimes recording her heart rate doubling while she remained completely still. The security camera in her room frequently malfunctioned, the footage always blurry, as if something else lurked in the darkness behind her. The climax came when a psychiatrist tried to hypnotize her to unlock memories. He suddenly went into violent convulsions mid-session, screaming one phrase over and over, "Don't open her eyes!" Rumors spread like wildfire. Some said Eliza hadn't truly come back alone. Others claimed she wasn't human anymore. A few people who had once lived near her family's old house swore they'd seen Eliza's silhouette standing under the trees behind the house at dusk, yet no one ever saw her leave. But it didn't stop there. In the diary of one of the former members of the original search team, they found scrawled pencil notes he didn't remember writing. Trail number 9. The entrance only opens when the moon sets. Don't say its name. If you hear singing, cover your ears. If you see it, don't let it know you're looking. Do you feel a chill yet? because this story is only just beginning. No one knows exactly what happened during the 5 years Eliza was missing, and what's more terrifying is that she, or whatever wore her shape, never cared to explain. She didn't speak, didn't cry, didn't smile. Every expression on her face looked like a mimicry of humanity, a mask carelessly pasted onto a soul unraveling. But at night, in the hospital's darkness, the nurses began hearing the sound of bare feet walking up and down the hallway. Every time they opened Eliza's room to check, she was there, unmoving, not even a twitch of her fingers. Yet, wet footprints stained the glossy white floor, leading from her door all the way to the end of the corridor, and vanished just at the edge of the window overlooking the forest. Strange dreams began to spread among hospital staff. Some dreamt of a towering figure, its skin gray like ash, stepping out from a hollowed tree trunk. Its face clawed to ribbons, revealing only 2 deep eye sockets. Others described dreams where they stood alone in the forest but couldn't recall why, until a broken voice from behind called their name, and when they turned around, they couldn't wake for hours. Some staff abruptly quit, a few disappeared without explanation, leaving only a shattered phone in a sink and their ID badge etched with nail marks. The hospital decided to transfer Eliza to an isolated treatment center in the mountains to minimize risk. But the night before the transfer, she stood up. For the first time in 3 months, walked out of her room and went straight to the small chapel behind the hospital grounds. Security footage showed her standing in the center aisle, staring directly at the crucifix on the ceiling, then smiling. It was a grotesque smile, as if her facial muscles no longer remembered how humans smile and had to invent their own version. Distorted, uneven, and so horrifying that the guard reviewing the footage suffered a seizure and drew his gun to shoot the monitor. When word reached Elmridge that Eliza had returned, the town split into 2 camps. Some believed they should pray for her, bless her, see her as a miraculous survivor of some unimaginable catastrophe. Others began to flee the town, especially those once involved in the old search effort. One of them, Joseph Hargreaves, the former police chief, was the last to return to the site where the bloody handkerchief had been found. He never told anyone what he saw there, but before he set himself on fire in the cabin near the woods, he left behind an audio recording in his desk drawer. She didn't come back on her own. She was released. And that thing, it's still in the forest. Still there, waiting for a gate to open. I saw it, I heard it laugh, and worst of all, I understood it. After that incident, Crowfield Forest was completely sealed off. Authorities erected no trespassing signs and hired guards. But the presence of Eliza grew increasingly inexplicable. She was moved to a treatment center in Bangor, equipped with advanced surveillance systems and a top psychiatric team. Yet the strange phenomena only intensified. Cameras glitched. Small objects, watches, pens, keychains, disappeared then reappeared inside her room. Other patients in the facility began drawing the same images: a hollow tree glowing red from within, a woman with no eyes, and strange letters twisting like roots. When the experts attempted to trace the language, they discovered it closely resembled an ancient script carved into stone in the northern region of Greenland, where a civilization lost thousands of years ago had once existed. No one could explain the connection between Eliza and this language. But the most chilling coincidence was this. One of the symbols repeated throughout the drawings meant vessel. The question arose, was Eliza still Eliza, or was she merely a shell, a human skin wrapped around something that had crossed the boundary of the human world? When neurologist William Merrow proposed a deep brain scan, he found slight changes in her brain structure. Some regions functioned as if they belonged to a creature incapable of emotion, devoid of fear reflexes. While preparing to publish his findings, he suddenly went missing from his own laboratory. His body was found 3 days later in the basement near the MRI equipment, not intact. On the wall behind where the body was discovered, blood had been smeared into a large circle with a twisted symbol inside, identical to the tree shape in the patient's drawings. The police were called in, but the case file was swiftly closed under the explanation of medical equipment malfunction, despite a host of suspicious evidence. That same night, all of Dr. Merrow's research data was wiped from the server within 1 minute, unrecoverable, as if it had never existed. A week later, Eliza suddenly began to speak again. Not in her own voice, but in many others, sometimes elderly, sometimes childlike, sometimes rasping like someone on their deathbed. She didn't answer any question directly, only repeated incoherent phrases, as if she were replaying echoes from a faraway place. But there was one sentence that the doctors believed came from her, or from the thing inside her. It's time to open the door again. This time, more than one will return. Rumors spread faster than any psychiatric report. From the Bangor Hospital to the town of Elm Ridge, strange stories were whispered in late-night cafes, at the post office, in sparsely attended church gatherings. Everyone knew Eliza had returned, and everyone knew she was no longer herself. But no one dared to admit the more terrifying truth. Perhaps Eliza had never returned at all, and something else had taken her place. Something that had seen what no one was meant to see. Something that had passed through a door not meant for humans. People began to see her figure near Crowfield Forest. They swore they saw her standing at the edge of the trees, face tilted toward a moonless sky. Others claimed they dreamed of being lost in the woods, lured deeper by a repeated lullaby, until a freezing hand touched their shoulder and jolted them out of sleep. Dream or not, one thing was undeniable. Those people were no longer the same. Their eyes were vacant, their speech disjointed, and sometimes they stared into nothing for minutes, as if listening to someone speaking just to them. The town of Elm Ridge grew unnaturally quiet. Community activities dissolved. Homes near the forest were abandoned. Children were told not to walk to school alone, and the church bell rang every night at 9 p.m. like a silent exorcism ritual. But no one truly believed that prayer could stop what was rising. On an October morning, thick fog blanketed the town like a burial shroud. No one saw the sun. And within that fog, 3 people, a 10-year-old boy, a library staff member, and a priest, vanished while walking along Main Street. The police launched a large-scale search, but found no clues except for a child's jacket beneath the town monument, torn as if by claws. Meanwhile, in Bangor, Eliza was no longer confined to her hospital room. She would often disappear for hours, despite the room being locked and monitored by 3 cameras. The footage always showed her sitting still, but the time jumped abruptly, and when staff returned to check, they found frantic sketches lining the hallway walls, all of the same tree, a hollow tree with a mouth-like cavity that seemed to breathe. A nurse, haunted by those images, slit her wrists in Eliza's room during her shift. Her blood spelled out a sentence on the wall. "I heard it breathe. The tree. It's waking up." Unable to explain the cause, doctors were forced to request Eliza's transfer to a special isolation unit. But on the night before the transfer was to be carried out, the entire facility lost power. For 27 minutes, all electricity was out. Security cameras recorded no movement. But when the power returned, Eliza was gone from her room, leaving behind a scorched handprint on the floor. 5 long, sharp fingers like the claws of a beast, burned deep as if by hellfire. This event prompted government intervention. A special investigative team was dispatched to Elm Ridge, led by Dr. Nora Callahan, a specialist in paranormal phenomena and dimensional crosspoints. She had previously led a classified study in Siberia, where an ancient ice chamber was discovered containing a deformed corpse with DNA that didn't fully match any known life form. Upon arriving in Elm Ridge, Nora immediately sensed a change in the air, a pressure, an unshakable feeling of being watched. During the first days of research, she was repeatedly woken by dreams of an inverted forest, trees growing down from the sky, and beneath their roots were twisted human bodies, pinned by thousands of bony fingers sprouting from the soil. One night, Nora ventured into Crowfield Forest with 2 assistants and a magnetic field detector. They lost contact with the command center the moment they stepped into a dead signal zone, the same place where the old search party had found Eliza's handkerchief. There, the detector emitted a strangled screech, compasses spun wildly, and headlamps flickered nonstop. The air thickened and the stench of rotting flesh emanated from all directions. Then they saw it, the tree. Not a normal tree, but a creature pretending to be one. Its trunk pulsed like it was breathing, and within its hollow core they saw eyes, hundreds of them, opening, watching them. Nora managed to record a few seconds before her assistant Henry began convulsing, screaming, "It's in my head! It's in my head!" and then charged into the trunk and vanished as if pulled inside. Nora and the remaining assistant fled the forest. From that night on, Nora was no longer the same. She began writing in a strange ancient language, stopped sleeping, stopped eating, and constantly whispered, "The tree is a gate. The tree is a mouth. We are the bait." Following these events, the town of Elmridge was officially placed under lockdown. The government labeled it a primal forest gas event, but the surrounding locals knew better. A special task force was established to guard the forest, but over the next 6 months, 7 soldiers disappeared without a trace. Then, during an emergency press conference held to reassure the public, Eliza reappeared. This time, she stepped out from the forest, no longer hiding, no longer avoiding. She wore a white dress, barefoot, her long hair covering her face. But what silenced the entire crowd wasn't her return, it was what followed behind her. Dozens of others were stepping out too. They were the previously missing, among them the 10-year-old boy, the library staff member, and Henry, Nora's assistant. All of them were silent. All of them bore twisted smiles. All of them had pitch-black eyes like ash. Eliza lifted her head, and for the first time in 5 years, she spoke. Her voice was not that of one person, but a chorus of overlapping sounds, as if hundreds of voices uttered the same sentence at once. "We have heard. We have seen. Now it is your turn." From that night forward, no one was allowed to enter Elmridge. All data about the town was sealed. But the people living nearby began to tell stories, how each night they heard whispers in the wind, names being called, cries, lullabies sung in a language not of mankind. Some swore they saw a girl in a white dress standing on a hill, looking toward them, hands slowly waving as if inviting. Some left their homes and never returned. And the tree in the forest, the one called the Gate, still stands there, waiting to open once more. Will we dare to step in, or will we continue to look away until the final door opens from the other side? You are watching the Real Horror Story channel. If you want to keep exploring chilling tales, unsolved mysteries, and events that have shaken humanity to its core, hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and never miss a single journey into the world of darkness. Because who knows, the next story might be yours.